Hi, let's now talk a little bit about Vega-Lite and how to customize your charts in order to achieve certain behaviors that are maybe different from the standard ones. So this is an example that I recently made for the Vega community, that it's the Vega-Lite isotype.plot. And as you can see, it's quite cool. So let's try to see how to build that. So I'm going to fork this into the Berkeley theme, and then let's start from scratch. So basically, let's remove this element from here, and then here we have the data, and this is how the data looks like. So I have one entry for each one of the elements that I have, and then basically I want to see if I can draw that as an isotype. So starting with the chart, basically you want to start with a mark, for instance the mark point, and then you say here is going to be my data. Then you just say render, so you could see the chart actually being displayed. So after doing that, remember that sets your marks, but then you need to start doing your channels. If you notice, I like putting the data next to the render, and that's going to be useful later when you start using faceting with Vega-Lite. So now in here, what we want is that we want the animals. So let's say that we want the field, we can put that as a nominal attribute, and then say that we want the animal in here. And then we could say something like, for instance, that we want the count. And then if we want that on the x-axis, then it will give us like a bar chart or a scatter plot that shows us how many of those we have. So that's nice there. I also have the countries, so I could be splitting by countries. So one way of doing that with Vega-Lite is that I can say, you know, I want to have rows that represent the field, and that will be nominal as well, country. So now that I have that, I have the two charts, and then I have those elements. I actually want to start, if I don't want to show each one of those, then if I just remove this, then the problem is that it's still not having anything on X. So on X, I actually want it to show like for each position. So this, I want it to be like the first one, the second one, the third one. If you take a look at the example that was created from the original Vega-Lite example, they actually had that hard-coded in there. But I found a way of calculating that with Vega. So one of the things you could do is that you can create a transformation, and then those transformations are what you can do in there. I can calculate a new field, in this case using a window, and then in there I want to have the row number, and then I'm going to save that as my index. And by doing that and making sure that you close all of them, then you could say this, the X attribute is going to be encoded to the index in there, and then you will get something like this. Now, if you want this to be computed, and actually to illustrate that, we could do it like this, I think. I wonder if I put it like here. No. So let's leave it like this for a moment. So basically what I want is this to reset. So what I could do is that I can say group that by the country. And then by doing that, at least it's resetting by country. And then you can pass more than one attribute in the group by. So you can say, I'm actually want to group by country, and then also by animal. So now I have these two elements. So that's getting closer. The next thing will be I want different shapes for each one of those. So I can duplicate the animal and double encode that with also the shape. And then when you do that, then now you have different shapes for each one of those. You can make this go a little bit bigger, like something like that. And so we're getting closer. And then if you want to start customizing, so what you can do, like first, since you are already going to notice that, like for instance, like this animal repeating in there, you don't need that, so you can start removing that from the different elements. So I think, for instance, if you go here on the axis, and then you say, I think it's here, header, it's false. That's not it, the title. There we go. So then if you say title is false, then it gets rid of that animal. You can do the same trick, for instance, on the row, like this, but then in there is not axis, is going to be a header, and then that gets rid of that. The other thing you might want to get rid of is the whole border on the elements. So you can apply configurations in here that apply to the whole chart. And I think what I can do in here is that I can say for all the axes, I want the stroke to be null. I think that's what it is, false. Let me check how they did it in here, because I'm forgetting. The configuration, the view has a stroke of null. So when you do that, then at least I'm getting rid of those elements. Like this index doesn't really make sense. So what you could do in there is as well say, you know what, I don't want any scale whatsoever. So I just provide something like this, or not the scale, but you could say, for instance, let's get rid of the whole, for X at least. You want your axis to be null. And then that gets rid of that. And then, like for instance, if you want to configure like the type of shape that you're using in here, you can define that manually as well. So you can say that my scale is going to be to have a specific domain. So I'm going to say that the domain is going to be cattle. And then this is equivalent to D3's domain and range for scales, peaks. And this will be a scale ordinal. And the final one is sheep. And then you need to say how you're going to be rendering this. So basically in here, you will need to provide like a different path that you can draw with SVG. So because of that, in the other example, they had like these roads that if you put that inside a path, it will actually draw like the cattle or the pig or the sheep. So we can pass those that I have conveniently waiting in there. And then I have the 3 paths, and now I can do these elements as you see in there. So having done that, I wonder if I can get these ones to be a little bit bigger. What else can I do? So the other thing I can do is that, for instance, let's make this smaller. Now that I have this in here, I don't really need to see the legend. So for the shape, you can also say that is going to have a legend false. And then I get rid of that. And then since we already have this in here, I might not need the axis for that. So I think I can just get rid of this whole thing like this, false. There we go. So, and then I can go back to making this bigger, maybe like this, and I can fill them as well and say that they are true for filling, and then of course like this. There we go. And then since you want to color code them, you also want to duplicate this and say that you want to use color in there. And of course this doesn't have an axis, but I don't want a legend, so right away let's get rid of that. I think I'm missing one element. Let's see what else did they do in there for the shape and the axis. Oh, maybe one of the things is that I need to say these are ordinal, and these are ordinal, these are ordinal. Oh, this is interesting. You can see now that if I change the scale, the color scale to be ordinal, then it actually changes that element. So I need to create a little bit more spacing. So let me see what else did they do in there that I'm forgetting. I have a size in here, opacity. You can change that on the top. The X and Y, they are both using ordinal in there. So, so I have that for this, and this one I have it as well. And I wonder if I should put this in here just for the sake of it. So I guess what I'm trying to show in here is that in Vega-Lite you can change, oh yes, I guess the other thing I'm changing is the width of the chart. So in this case, something like this, and the height as well. There are other attributes that you can change, for instance, there we go. So let's say this is 400 and then maybe this is 800 or something like that. Yes, so now it's better separated. So let's make this a little bit smaller so we can see it all at once. So as you can see, Vega-Lite will try to make the best defaults, but sometimes it's not going to choose exactly what you want. So you can do a lot of changes in the configuration. You can change configurations at the mark level. You can make configurations at the channel level, or you can do the whole thing and like at the chart level, which modify all of them. Like learning which ones are the ones that you can change. It's a matter of reading the documentation here on Vega-Lite. So go and explore that. As you saw me in there, what I was doing is just taking a look at a previous example and then rebuilding from that. So that is a very good practice for finding what are the things that you can change. And here is, for instance, all the possible things that you can change in the configuration. You can change the axis, the header, the legend, the mark, the style. So take a look at those for the different type of things that you can modify. In the same way, if you take a look in the documentation, I wonder if I have it here. Yes, here are all the operations that you can do. Remember that I computed that row number in there, so that's another way of putting that in there. So hopefully you can use that to create more custom-made charts in Vega-Lite and forcing them to make what you want.